Welcome once again to Chicago Jewish Cafe. Today we have a great honor of hosting as our guest Professor Jonathan Sarna. He is one of the leading scholars of American Jewish history. He is a professor and trustee of Brandeis University, and I have invited him precisely because of certain things that took place at Brandeis last week, and I'd like some clarifications as to what's going on. Now, what we're talking about the faculty voting, voting to remove the president, or not remove, but to not to show any trust in the continuation of the leadership by the president Ronald Liebowitz. And as a result, Ronald Liebowitz said that he was going to resign after 8 years on November 1st. For me, the big issue is what took place, because Ronald Liebowitz, in my mind, was one of the first people in scholarly world to have taken steps to prevent escalation of hostilities toward Jewish students by many faculties in different universities and the students in those universities. Jonathan, could you please elaborate what happened?
Yeah, I'm glad to do that, and I actually was at the faculty meetings, and I have to say that as often the case, what was reported is not identical to what happened. I think that the decision about resignation actually preceded the faculty vote. And you can see that because when the trustees reported the resignation, they immediately said that there will be an interim president, Arthur Levitt, and that's clear that this had been planned long in advance. A man of the caliber of Arthur Levitt, you don't get 24 hours earlier. Now, what was going on? I think there were really three factors. And I call it the coalition of the disaffected at Brandeis, and different people were disaffected for different reasons. I think the most serious, and this bothered the trustees as well, is that not much money had been raised while the totality of small gifts actually increased. We weren't able to get the kind of big gifts that, say, were raised in the era of Yehuda Reinhardt's. And, the presidents today are supposed to bring in eight-figure gifts, and that didn't happen. And you can feel that it didn't happen. They want to build a new science building. There's not enough money. The faculty really have not gotten much in the way of raises for many years. So that's the most important reason. The second reason, and then we get to the third, the second reason, because we don't have much money, they had to lay off staff in June. I think it's generally agreed that it was a very unfortunate layoff. Some of the the lowest level staff, not well paid, people in some cases who had been around for 10, 20 years were laid off. That always saps morale without saving so much money. I don't actually think the president did it, but if you're the president, you're responsible for what goes on the campus. And there was a lot of unhappiness about those layoffs. But what got attention, and this probably tells you more about the newspapers than about what the university was, what the trustees were thinking. What got attention was that there were some people, a minority, who were unhappy that the president had banned Students for Justice in Palestine from the campus and had called police to arrest illegal marchers, mostly from outside the campus, who marched illegally and actually assaulted policemen and certainly frightened students. Some of us, I among them, applauded the president's actions there, and I had direct dealings with the students and know how frightened they were. I also know for a fact, it was also in a police report, that the police were assaulted by some of these guys, and anyone who, things were thrown at them. The other side says, well, it was only water that was thrown. It's not exactly clear what was thrown at it, but you throw things at the police, they arrest you in any place. And educationally, it's important to know you don't assault policemen. But what is more important and clear from the police report is a lot of those folks were outsiders. Brandeis is a private university, and the president said, and the trustees backed him 100%, that his number one priority is keeping the campus safe, and he did. Now, the trustees were very explicit in making clear that was not one of the factors behind their action, but naturally, the disaffected added their disaffection over this issue to the financial part of it and the staff dismissals, and that's why I call it a coalition of the disaffected. I actually think I saw the president afterwards. I think that he will land within the Jewish community. I think people know what he stands for. But I'm pretty sure that the trustees, while they're going to try and find someone who can raise big money, I think they have no intention of changing the character of the university. And in fact, we have probably 80 or 100 transfers to Brandeis of students from other places who came to Brandeis because it's a safe environment for Jewish pro-Israel students. I'll be very surprised if that changes. My hope is that the next president will make that very clear. And if there are faculty who don't like it, well, there are plenty of universities that they can go to.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about later about the next president. But meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about what happened to Liebowitz. Um, I mean, I see that there's problem with money, and Brandeis somehow he has big plans and insufficient number of dollars to back him up. But in 8 years of his service, Leibowitz reduced substantially the budget deficit of Brandeis University and did many things, toward it. Now, true, he did not bring big donors, but okay, if that is the reason, and you say that it is the major reason, that would be fine. But what I see, especially in reading newspapers, including the university, the Justice student newspaper, is that there's a lot of people in Brandeis University, among faculty and among students, who really feel that Israel is committing genocide. And they come out on the side of so-called victims, that is Palestinian Hamas.
Yeah, I don't know what percent of the campus that reflects. It certainly reflects some faculty and students. What was interesting to me at the faculty meetings has been how many faculty have been silent, partly because only tenured faculty tend to speak up at faculty meetings, and an extraordinary number of the faculty who you see quoted are actually emeritus faculty, old leftist faculty who retired and have no stake in the university. I mean, to give an example, the Boston Globe quoted a very distinguished retired colleague, Professor Bernadette Bruton, who is, I mean, she came to graduation even wearing such a scarf. She's entitled to an opinion, but it is strange to me, and I say this as someone who will myself be retiring, strange to me that Brandeis has permitted retirees to have such a public stance in trying to shape the university's future. I know of no university besides Brandeis that allows that. And I think a bad mistake, really. But I do agree that there are some at Brandeis who are openly anti-Israel. I don't think that there should be, an oath to support Israel if you want to teach at Brandeis. But I am concerned that we have done a not very good job helping new faculty understand what Brandeis is about. In other words, there are faculty who say Brandeis a non-sectarian university, as if it were no different than so many others. And they, of course, know nothing about the history that shaped Brandeis, that made it distinctive, why it's named for the first Jewish Supreme Court justice, and the like. I think, and I would say, I hope that the next president devotes more time to helping new faculty understand what Brandeis is, what it means to have a historically Jewish university. It's really the only historically Jewish yet also non-sectarian university in the whole country. And just as historically black colleges teach faculty what their past is about, so Brandeis, I think, needs to spend more time, both for faculty and students. Now, that said, obviously in Israel, there are multiple perspectives and points of view. There are plenty of Israelis who love Israel, but are somewhat less in love with the prime minister and the party in power. And so the same is true at Brandeis. And that's good. That's what a university should be, a place where a variety of views are debated and discussed. I would not want there to be an orthodoxy on what people believe a political situation in the Middle East should be. But what's different since October 7th was, people who echoed Hamas, meaning supportive of murder and rape and kidnapping. And there I draw the line. We certainly would not allow...
And of destruction of entire state of Israel.
Yeah, exactly. Their goal, when they call from the river to the sea, that means destroying the state of Israel. That's a euphemism. And I have to say, we would not allow the Ku Klux Klan to march through the campus with nooses and, shout slogans that everybody understood were anti-Black. We wouldn't allow anti-women voices. I remember well a few years ago when a fraternity at Yale University ran through the campus to the women's dorms and shouted, "No means yes, and yes means anal." And they said, but it's free speech. And the women were terrified. And the university threw the whole group out, basically saying that that kind of speech was hate speech and not a speech becoming Yale students. And to my mind, what Hamas yelled and their slogans about genocide and the like,
and students for justice in Palestine,
right,
is the most radical organization on campuses.
Yeah, the Students for Justice in Palestine, many of us believe that it's one of a group of organizations literally receiving funds indirectly from Iran. It does not mean that everybody who agrees with them knows that, just like not everybody who supported communism in America knew that the Communist Party was getting money from Moscow. But no question about it. And that's why he threw them up, because President Liebowitz knew a lot more about Students for Justice in Palestine than a lot of university presidents did. And he had no problem. And the Intrab throwing them up. And if you actually were at their demonstration, or you looked at the tape, or you read the police report, it's perfectly clear that there were people with walkie-talkies giving instructions, This was not a spontaneous kind of march. This was a well-organized march, designed actually to terrorize part of the campus. Jewish students who, it was a Friday, and Jewish students who wanted to go to Friday night, what we call Shabbat services, were told to stay in their dorm because of the fear of confrontation. And that gives you a sense of why this was no ordinary demonstration. This was hate speech, and it's interesting that Congress has no trouble understanding that a hostile atmosphere is not an atmosphere in which people learn anything. And just like there are laws that prevent a hostile atmosphere in the workplace, so a university can't have an atmosphere that is hostile to Jews or to supporters of the state of Israel or Zionists. And I give the president a lot of respect for his stance. I'll be very surprised if the next president has a different view. We are, after all, named for Louis Brandeis. Louis Brandeis was the leader of American Zionism. So
But the next president was President Emeritus of Teachers College at Columbia University. And we know what was the policy of Columbia University.
Well, he hasn't been at Columbia for many years. He's 75 years old. He's a Brandeis graduate himself. I don't know him personally. I'll be very surprised if he's more than a caretaker. Remains to be seen. But I don't.
What happened with the Student for Justice for Palestine? I understand that after one semester where they were sort of disbarred from being a organization, a student organization, they came back the next semester and were active.
I am not familiar. I'm teaching this semester. I haven't seen them and am not familiar with their being on campus. All I can say, and I have 55 students, many of them, since the class is on American Judaism, many of them Jewish and active in Hillel. I have not heard that students were frightened here. But I don't know whether they are officially allowed on campus. I certainly have not seen encampments, nor have I heard of any marches on campus. And I have to think that if students felt frightened, one would have heard about it. I would also remind you that the dean of Brandeis is a former professor of Jewish studies, Jeffrey Schulzen, active in the Jewish community, someone who has a deep understanding of Jewish life and ties to Israel. So I would not want listeners to think that our students are in the same position as students at Columbia or Harvard, who truly are distracted from their studies by what is going on. Could that change after November 1st? It could, but I'd be surprised. I tend to think that the Palestinians have given up on Brandeis, which is fine with me. And they decided that they would have more success on other campuses. And, I actually expect that more students will apply to Brandeis because at Brandeis, they know that and their parents know that they will be safe and secure and able to devote themselves to their studies and not be distracted by those who threaten to harm them.
In reading about this thing, I also found that there's a lot of faculty that actually feel that Brandeis, despite its origin and history, should really not be in any way Jewish whatsoever.
Yeah, there certainly are faculty. Some of them, I think, as I said, emeritus, but some today who hold that view. I obviously have a different view. I don't, there are people in America who think we shouldn't be a democratic country. That's what happens. That's the price you pay for freedom, is that there are people who will take that freedom and promote ideas that are antithetical to the system. I do think it's worthwhile for the trustees to remind the faculty that that they set the policy of the university and they employ the faculty, but it is not the province of the faculty to define the university. And I think that a good president will make clear what the responsibilities of the faculty are. And in a free country, faculty who don't want to be in a university with the kind of rich Jewish heritage the Brandeis possesses may decide to go elsewhere. And, that certainly would be fine. I am happy that Brandeis is diverse, but I am certainly unhappy that there are people who have so little respect for the one historically Jewish secular university in America that they want to change it. And those people would be horrified if someone tried to weaken historically Black colleges. So it's strange to me that there isn't more resistance to those who want to alter historically Jewish colleges. But listeners may be interested to know that as the days get shorter, we shift our faculty meetings earlier. We happen to have faculty meetings on Friday because it was considered inappropriate for the faculty meeting to last into the Sabbath. There's no other university that does that. We are closed on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur this year, Saturday, not a factor. Other Jewish holidays. So there's still a lot of Judaism and of Jewish heritage at Brandeis. And whereas students at many universities worry, how can I miss 6 days of university because of Jewish holidays? Our students don't have that fear. That may not be in the newspaper, but it's important for listeners to know that it's still the case. Will it continue? I'm better at predicting the past than predicting the future, but I think that is what helps make Brandeis distinctive.
Jonathan, I'm very, very happy to hear what you just said. You know, that Brandeis keeps some or maybe even many Jewish things uh, as part of its working institution. You know,
Well,
this is very important. I mean, nobody makes anybody there. There's what, 35% of students are Jews?
yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so 65% are not, and nobody makes them change their mind. But it is, as you said, you know, traditional Jewish, not Orthodox, not fully, but Jewish university, you know, similar to Howard University, you know, and nobody in their right mind, I do not know of anybody anywhere, not at Howard, not any other place, would say, well, we need to reduce really the amount of blackness in Howard
Yeah,
uh, University.
exactly. I think that's exactly the way I think about it as well. Um, and I think that chairman of the board of trustees, she goes back to the class of 1975 at Brandeis, which was also my class. And in those days,
You're
Brandeis,
talking about Lisa Krantz?
yeah, Lisa. And in those days, Brandeis was about 70% Jewish, but Lisa is deeply conscious of the Jewish character of the university. And it's unthinkable to me, having known her, that she wants to see that tampered with, if anything. And she said it to me that she would like to strengthen the Jewish character of the university, especially since Brandeis is really a haven now for students who are refugees from other universities where, as we know, even if they're tolerated, they are discriminated against socially. People will not befriend them, will not sit with them. Um, Professor Eitan Hirsch of Tufts has published significant articles talking about the social isolation of Jews in American universities. None of that is the case at Brandeis. I should also say we have a very large, meaning hundreds and hundreds of students who keep kosher. And this past weekend, which happened also to be Parents' Weekend, we had one of the largest Friday night kosher dinners that we've had at Brandeis. So, you know, it's what gets reported, what doesn't get reported. I wish that more attention would be paid to the students and to the faculty who have contempt for the de-Judaizers. Um, I will say that it has something to do with the nature of journalism itself. Um, Journalists like man bite dog stories, meaning unusual. Oh, someone who's anti-Israel at Brandeis, that's news. But
Mhm.
that Brandeis has the largest Israel studies program of any major university, the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies, that was not reported at all, even though it's true. And the class on Israel by Alexander Kay is considered a model on what a proper history of Israel should be, how you can teach it honestly with attention to complexity and so on. And people come to learn how he teaches it. So there's an awful lot that unfortunately it doesn't get out, and I'm so glad you invited me so I can talk about some of that.
And I appreciate it very much. And the reason I invited you, because Brandeis for me is a hallmark of the things that are happening at university level and in American society at large. And when I saw this thing with Liebowitz, I became a little bit astonished, because if Brandeis goes, then what is to ask of anybody else, about these things? But you made me feel much better after talking to you, that there's a hope and that there's good things that are happening there. And my, of course, amateur advice to Brandeis is strengthen your Jewish character. Then there's going to be more people that would be willing to be donors. If you're going to be diluting it, and diluting it, there's no reason for anybody to give you. Not the Jews, not the anti-Jews, not anybody in between.
Yeah, I agree with you and share those sentiments. I'm certainly aware that there are lots of different ways of being Jewish, and when Brandeis is at its best, all of those ways of being Jewish are represented. But there's no room for anti-Semitism at Brandeis, and I think that has to be made very clear. And
But I see that
no,
there is droplets of anti-Semitism among the faculty and among the students.
I think that that's probably correct. I'm glad that we have non-Jewish students. By the way, if we didn't have non-Jewish students, a lot of the Jewish students wouldn't come, meaning they want to be in a diverse, mixed environment. But
I also mean
yeah,
Jewish students, nominally Jewish students,
yeah.
that I do not, for a variety of reasons, go that way.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, when this is all over, a considerable, what Jews call a cheshbon nefesh, soul searching, about how Israel was taught, and about why we have seen, in some Jewish circles, not just criticism. There is certainly room. Anyone who reads the Israeli press reads criticism, but there are certain things in which one would imagine everybody would agree, and one of them is that Hamas, murderers, kidnappers, rapists, and out to destroy Israel, that they are beneath contempt. And truly, I think it was the President of the United States who described it as evil when it first happened. And I think that a full spectrum needs to appreciate that. But I personally very much want Brandeis to continue to be a university. And it was Louis Brandeis who felt that the best solution for bad speech is more speech. And as long as it's restricted to, I say this, you say that, there's a discussion, people choose, That's what a university
If you
should
call
do.
for genocide, that is already not free speech.
Yeah, once you begin talking about violence and marching and assaulting, then of course that is not free speech. That's terror tactics, and as I say, what troubles me the most about it is that it creates an environment in which really education and learning cannot at all take place. Um, and that's really quite tragic. And in many ways, it's not what the Title 9, Title 6, permits out in the real world. Yeah, there are significant limits on what you can say because you cannot create a hostile environment, as the law puts it. And it seems to me that Students for Justice in Palestine and related societies have precisely created a hostile environment for Jews on many campuses, and that is precisely what the law is meant to prevent, and we ought to be a lot stronger in condemning it and punishing those and expelling those who engage. I did want to add one other thing, which is disproportionately, some of these problems have been caused by students from abroad who are not Americans at all, who are, and I think there's a serious question
You mean
whether,
students from abroad that attend Brandeis University?
well, I think at Brandeis, this was true. At Brandeis, there were students from abroad, but there were also all sorts of people, apparently, who came from outside the university and came onto the campus. They should have been stopped before they got on the campus, in
Well,
my view.
Liebowitz tried to do precisely that.
Yeah. I mean, eventually that's, what happened. But certainly at Columbia, somebody who's not at all sympathetic to Israel, Peter Beinart, said that the majority of those whom he saw at Columbia were either students from abroad or students of color, totally disproportionate. And I think that too is something to think about. It is very sad that some of our students of color have become persuaded that their problems are caused by the existence of the state of Israel. Indeed, Israel has done more for Africa.
It's not only
but
students of color. It's not only students of color. It's queers. It's students of colors. It's many. I do not know if there's still feminist organizations, but many of them are, against Israel,
Yeah.
and the leftists in general.
I mean, I think it was very shocking to many people who thought of themselves as feminists, or to see that when Israeli women are raped, somehow feminists don't notice or pay attention.
Raping Jewish women is an act of liberation against settler colonialism, or whatever it is.
Feminism in some ways died on October 7th for a lot of Jews. And, it's a very sad moment.
Well, that's why we need Brandeis. Now, the last question is, Brandeis Board of Trustees, are there enough people to elect worthy president? I mean, I know that Levine is going to be there as a temporary person. You know, he's already of age, and he's not going to be. But is there's going to be somebody, you know, that will be able to actually conceptualize a new thing? Because I have to say that from what I see, Leibovitz was not bad at all. But
I, you know, I certainly hope that that will happen. My guess is, if they follow what's happened in the past, that the university will appoint a search committee, and when you see the makeup of the search committee, one will know a lot more about what's going on. But it will be very difficult for a president to succeed at Brandeis who cannot talk to Jewish donors. And I think Jewish donors have historically been the mainstay of the university, and we need someone who will bring them back, not someone who will drive them away. But look, there's
but
a
also to talk
tremendous number.
but also to
Yeah,
talk to Jewish students and
yeah,
non-Jewish students at Brandeis. That is
yeah,
a
yeah.
very important.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly right. Um, uh, but it's a very hard job running a university. There are a huge number of universities looking for presidents, and I think that those vacancies, and that includes Rutgers, where the president also resigned. Uh, and it was interesting to see that the president of Rutgers resigned because there's so much politics, and he that wasn't why he had really taken the presidency. Yeah, he didn't feel he could succeed in shaping a campus. Not to speak of the many Ivy presidents who have resigned. So I think that we need to focus on some of the challenges facing higher education, and one of the clear challenges is for presidents to make clear that while we do accept a free speech, there are limits, that the environment cannot become a hostile environment, and that his job is to protect all of the students, and those who target groups of students face expulsion. It's as simple as that. And I would say that universities, including some Catholic universities, where the administration took a strong stance, have been perfectly fine. We have not paid enough attention to the question of what universities were open and welcoming, and what universities failed. Some of the universities in Florida, including Gainesville, really passed the test. And as I say, Fordham and Boston College, they passed the test. And one needs to have leaders who will lead and will be willing to dismiss those who violate the rules, and who create the kind of hostile environment that really makes all education impossible.
Jonathan, thank you very much for stopping by, and thank you for sharing, and a special thank you for giving, at least to me, some reason to be optimistic about the future of Brandeis. I just want to finish our conversation by quoting Lisa Crank.
Mhm.
She said, Ron, that is Ronald Liebowitz, he has faithfully championed Brandeis' core and founding principles. While many have chosen to stay silent, Ron has had the moral courage to be a leading voice in recognizing that we cannot cower from any form of hatred, especially anti-Semitism. And I hope that you, being a member of Board of Trustees and the entire Board of Trustees and whatever committee you'll have for selection of next president, will make the right choice and will get somebody who in this area is no worse than Ronald Liebowitz, maybe even better if it can be.
Okay, thank you.
As they say in China, sei gesund.
Be well and Shana Tova.
Shana
Bye-bye.
tova gam lach.